Hello and welcome to the visual Greek version of my weekly podcast, Through the Bible in 10 Years. Today I have interlinearbible.org up, biblehub.com/interlinear, and we are going to look now at the parable of the lost son. So last week we looked at the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin, and Luke 15 finishes out with the parable of the lost son, also called the parable of the prodigal son. Of course, this is one of the best known stories in the Bible, and so it's always difficult to have fresh eyes when you have so much of a backstory in your head, so much tradition, as it were, about how to interpret something, but we're going to try. And let's go ahead and look at this text using the Greek of interlinearbible.org. All right, verse 11, it begins. And he said, a certain person, and I know it's anthropos, but anthropos does not have a gender. It's not a particularly gendered, or shall I say, it doesn't necessarily refer to a man in that sense. It refers to a person, a human, as it were. And a certain human, certain man, a certain person is a good translation. A certain person had two sons. Verse 12. And he said to the younger of them, and the younger of them said to the father, give me that which falls to me, the part that falls to me of the thing that is, of the being, of the property, of the stuff, of the ousia. Ousia is a fun Greek word. In the debates over the Trinity, they debated whether Jesus was homoousia, of the same substance, or homoiousia, of a similar substance to God. And they decided that he was of the same substance, homoousia. Ousia is the stuff, the substance, the property, as it were. So the younger son says, I wish you were dead, Dad, but you're not. Can you give me what I would get if you were? I'm exaggerating, of course, but that is, I think, some of the honor-shame connotation of the request. This is a very, it goes well beyond cheeky. This is insulting. This is, I think it does have some of the connotations that I suggested. Yeah, you're not dead yet, Dad. Hurry up. Well, okay, go ahead and give me my stuff. And the father does it. Now, of course, a lot of times there wasn't anything for the younger children, especially in the ancient Near East. So it is quite striking to me that the younger son gets anything. But good for the father that he is giving his younger son some of the inheritance too. And so he does, finishing verse 12, and he divided to them the property. So he basically says, I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I'm dead and give you all your stuff now. He does seem to retain some control over it, even though he has technically allotted it, which is interesting. I'm not an expert on Roman law, and Luke is, of course, writing for probably a non-Jewish audience, I would say, a Gentile audience. He focuses on the fact that the good news is for everyone. And there's nothing wrong with tailoring the words of Jesus to fit a new context. We might say, well, that's not right. It has to be exactly what Jesus said. Well, that's just not. You can't compare the Gospels and conclude that that's exactly what the Gospel writers did. They felt free to arrange things around, move events around, and things like that. And I find no fault. That's not an error. That's not a problem. If we think it's an error, that's a problem with us, because that says my perspective is more important than their perspective. My way of evaluating these things is what's important. And if we're going to be inductive and let the Bible itself set the terms, we can't worry about that too much. It's just simply the conclusion we'll come to when we compare different versions of the text with each other. So anyway, I think that we should assume that this story, as it's told, is told in a way by Luke that it would be most instructive and most relevant and most helpful to the audience for whom Luke is writing. Luke is writing for Theophilus, who may actually be a Roman official of some kind, and so we should assume that we should not insist that the legal parameters of the story fit uh, exactly within Palestine. I'm not saying they don't, by the way. I'm just saying that it would be perfectly legitimate for Luke to tailor this a little bit to a Roman audience, so that the message, because the message is what's important, right? What's important is that Theophilus gets the word that the Lord wants to give to Theophilus. That's what's important. We get our sense of what's important all twisted up, and we can't see that our own culture is involved in that sort of thing. Anyway, that's a tangent I never intended to go into. But basically, the younger son says, "Give me some stuff," and the father divided his life, his bios, his life. He divided his life among them. Verse 13, and not many days. Verse 13, I mean, after not many days, having gathered all the things, the younger son went away into a distant country, and there he wasted his being. He wasted his substance. He wasted his stuff. He wasted his estate, the interlinear says here. So he does it living unvirtuously, living prodigally, asotos. I don't know this word. It's not a high frequency word, I don't think, in the Old Testament. Wastefully. Looks like this is what's called a hapax legomena. It only occurs once in the entire Greek New Testament. So he lives wastefully, just basically throws away everything. Now, a thought that might occur, and I'm not sure whether this was in Luke's head or not, but a thought that occurs here is that imagine if the son had done this after the father had died. We love to indict this son and blast him for horrible shame that he brought to his father, but the father's still alive. By giving him this inheritance before the son dies, the father has a chance to reclaim the son. The elder brother would not have taken his younger brother back. Maybe as a slave he would have, but he certainly wouldn't have welcomed his younger brother back if the father had died. And so, in a way, it's good that he sowed his wild oats while the father was still alive. That's a kind of a twist on it that occurred to me once upon a time. Well, verse 14, and having spent everything of him, a famine came to be, a severe famine, a strong famine came to be throughout that country, and he began to be in need, to be lacking. Verse 15, and having gone, he attached himself to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields, to feed pigs. Now, you may be sharper than I am on this, but I think I grew up thinking pigs, ooh, yuck, dirty, slop. But there is a religious and ethnic connotation here, because if you're in a place where there are pigs, you're not in Israel anymore. This guy has left the building. When he went to a far-off country, and I don't think, I certainly didn't pick up on this for a long time, he's not just leaving his family, he's leaving his God. He's going to a place where they don't worship Yahweh. Why would he do this? He has decided to leave the Israel. So he's not only shamed his father, he's not only shamed his family, he's not only shamed his village, he's not only he shamed Israel, but he's also slapped Yahweh in the face, as it were. He is gone. He's left the building. This guy has gone way off the reservation, so to speak. Verse 16. And he was longing to fill his belly from the pods that the pigs were eating. This guy's in bad shape. He's thinking pig food is good stuff, and no one was giving to him. So he's hit rock bottom. Verse 17. To himself, however, having come to his senses, having come to himself, he said, how many servants, how many hired servants, how many people paid a wage, how many wage servants of my father have abundance of bread, and I with hunger here am perishing. He's come to realize how good he actually had it back at home. Verse 18, having arisen, I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I sinned. I have wronged heaven and you. Now, sin, I want to reiterate something I've said over and over again. Sinning is not missing the mark. That is not a biblical understanding, certainly not a New Testament understanding of sin. And it would be a root fallacy or a historical fallacy to insist that it must mean that because at some point in some reference hundreds of years earlier, it was about shooting an arrow that missed the target. There's so many fallacies, semantic fallacies involved in that whole line of thinking that it drives me nuts. To sin is to do wrong, and to sin against somebody is to wrong somebody. I have sinned against heaven. I've sinned against the sky. And he has, right? Remember, we talked about him, as it were, metaphorically slapping Yahweh in the face. He has shamed his God. I've sinned against heaven, and I've sinned before you. That is, I've wronged my Father. Verse 19. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your wage earners, one of your day workers, your paid employees, as it were. Make me one of them. The word is mistheos, so it's not doulos or something like that. It's a work for hire kind of person, it seems to me. Verse 20, and having risen up, he went to his father, and him still being far distant, his father saw him and was moved with compassion. I love the word for compassion here, splanknidzo. His guts wrenched. He felt it in his belly. He was moved, physically moved. I don't want to take it too far, but he was moved with compassion. We like to talk about him kind of watching for his son. I don't know exactly what the cultural picture here is. I can certainly picture a father sitting outside. He's retired, as it were. He's given everything to his two sons. Now he's sitting back and sitting at the city gate talking to the older men. He's at McDonald's in the morning for breakfast, talking to the town people. Men have been doing this for millennia. But somehow or another, he is watching. He's watching. He's not on YouTube. He's just watching. And he sees his son. And having run, he fell upon his neck and kissed him. So some have suggested that this is a little bit prodigal of the father. This is disgraceful behavior, some have said, for the father to run. He should grovel at your feet. In fact, you shouldn't even talk to him. Those would be more of the sentiments. But he runs to his son. Maybe, so I've heard people say, maybe to protect him from the villagers beating him up, mobbing him and beating him senseless with rods or something, to protect his son. I don't know. That might be going a little bit beyond here, but certainly, the idea of the prodigal father. That's the name of a book based upon those sorts of nuances to this story. He runs to him, and of course, the song. He's running after you. Oh, the reckless love. Some people hate that song. God's love's not reckless, and I'm sorry, it's biblical. Deal with it. This is the parable of the prodigal son. That song is entirely biblical. It's completely based upon what the Father does here. And if your picture of God doesn't see him running after the lost, then your picture of God is not Jesus's, and it's not Luke's, and it's not adequate. God is, the reckless love that runs after us. That is this scandalous. It's scandalous, this story, what it says about the love of God for us. Verse 21, so the son does it. He said, the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I've done wrong. I've wronged you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your servants. This is in parentheses in our Bible, so I don't know whether there's a textual issue here or not. I might just look real quick. Yes, this is a disputed. Some manuscripts have it, some manuscripts don't. There are strong manuscripts on both sides here, so external evidence won't decide it. There is a rule. It's not a foolproof rule, but there's a rule that says the shorter reading is more likely to be original. So I suspect, if I have to flip a coin, I'm going to guess that this was added to balance the earlier part, and that it was added into the text. That makes the most internal sense, and that this parenthetical remark probably wasn't in the original text. But it has strong support. Sinaiticus has it. I think Vaticanus has it. Papyrus does not. Papyruses tend to be older than the what are called uncial manuscripts. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with it, of course, and this is something you need to know about these textual variants. These textual variants don't really usually change the meaning at all. It's just a question of, well, what did the first version of Luke actually say? So I'll leave that aside and keep going. Verse 22, and the father said to his servants, quickly, bring out a stole, bring out a robe, the first stole, the best robe, clothe him, give to him a ring on his finger, which is interesting. I don't know the full cultural significance of the ring there, but it does go a little bit against my the background I grew up with, where we weren't supposed to have rings. I wonder what they did with that. You might say, well, that's just cultural. We all dismiss what we don't like as cultural, don't we? Or at least that's a tendency. And sandals for his feet, because apparently he didn't have any sandals on his feet. A luxury, right? Only the best. Maybe that's probably what we're saying here, that these are things that most people don't have. He is really restoring his status as the son, right? Because I doubt that Peter had a ring on his finger. Did Peter have sandals on his feet? I'm not sure. Maybe he did. But these are not essential items of clothing. So they suggest a lavishing on the son that goes beyond the ordinary. So he's not only letting him, okay, you can be my son again, but he's actually lavishing on him things that he definitely doesn't deserve. Verse 23, and bring the calf, the wheat-filled calf, the wheat-filled bull, kill it, sacrifice it, and having eaten it, let us be merry. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. Interesting, he treated his father as if his father was dead. Dad, you're not dead, but I wish you were. He treated his father as dead, but he was the one that it turned out had died. It wasn't the father who'd died and give his inheritance to him. It's the son that had died. But now he's risen from the dead. He is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to rejoice. Well, the story doesn't end there, does it? If the story ended there, we would all be happy, and we'd go have a little bit of maybe a hamburger, to celebrate, or steak. But that's not where the story ends, does it? Verse 25. Now, his older son was in the field. He's working. This is a working guy. I have overtones of Mary and Martha here in my head. You're concerned with many things, Martha, but Mary is concerned about one thing. And while coming, he drew near to the house, and he heard symphony. He heard music and dancing. They danced. Wow. I don't know what my holiness forebears did with this passage. Verse 26, and having called near one of his servants, he began inquiring what these things might be. Nice little optative there for you Greekophiles. Verse 27, and he said to him, the brother of you has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he's received him in good health. Verse 28, and he was angry. He was wrathful, and he was not willing to go in. Interesting. Now, a lot of us, we don't blame him, right? And that's a perfectly reasonable human response to this. He needs to suffer a little. You need to let him grovel more. What are you going to go ahead and immediately restore him? You need to let him beg a little bit. But his father, having gone, was begging him, that is, begging the older brother to come in. This is a all-purpose father, right? And this is reckless too. I don't think we realize that the older son has no right to reject what his father's done either. The older brother is a bad brother, a bad son too. We need to feel that, because we let the older brother, I think, off the hook too easily. The father is reckless in his love in running after the older brother too. He wants the older brother to be fully restored too. He wants both of the brothers to be restored to him and to each other. And the father is the one he's doing the reconciliation work here. He's not like, well, you cook your goose, you stew in it, or even the older brother. Well, you let the older brother, you just lock the door and make him stay out until I say he can come in. Those are not the attitudes of the father here. Verse 29, in answering, the older brother said to the father, "Look, so many years I am serving you, and I never disobeyed your commandment. And to me you never gave a young goat, that with the friends of mine I might make merry. Um, uh, this is a faithful son." And again, we remember the parable of the lost sheep. The older brother is like the sheep that weren't lost. The older brother is like the coins that weren't lost. And here the father has gone after the one that left them alone and gone after the one that is lost. And you can understand the outrage. And here we need we need to at some point step back and realize that this is not just a parable about two sons. That in the context of Israel, the elder brother are the Pharisees. The elder brother are the scribes. Remember how this chapter began last week in verses 1 and 2? He is welcoming tax collectors and sinners, and the Pharisees and the scribes don't like it. Why are you eating with sinners? Why are you eating with toll collectors? Why are you letting prostitutes come anywhere near you? What is wrong with you, Jesus? This is the elder brother, and we have to realize there is a reversal here. By the end of this story, the righteous ones, the Pharisees, the tax collectors, and the elder brother are no longer really righteous. They have rejected Jesus. There's a parable that is shorter in Matthew. It's the parable of the two sons, and it goes something like this. There was a father who had two sons that he asked to go work in the field. One said he would go work, but then he didn't. And the other one said he wouldn't work, but then he did. And Jesus says it's the son who said he wouldn't work, but did, that the father is pleased with. The elder brother here is like the son who said he would go work in the field, but he didn't. Now, obviously, he's working in the field here. But the Pharisees, they were righteous. Jesus never criticizes the Pharisees for keeping the law. What he criticizes them for is their rejection of him and their rejection of those that Jesus is restoring, the poor, the women, the fatherless, the marginalized. Their rejection of those are what leads to their undoing. And the elder brother is not reconciled in the story. We have to realize that the elder brother does not come to the feast by the end of this story. The elder brother does not make it, presumably, into the kingdom of God in this model. And of course, the application is clear that those Christians who do not come around to forgive those who the Lord receives back, that those who are in the church who do not love their enemies, who do not choose to reconcile with those who don't behave right, when they repent, that they are going to find themselves outside of the kingdom. That is a clear inference of this passage. And we go on to see that this son just refuses to be reconciled with the restored lost sheep. But when this son of yours, not my brother, when this son of yours, the one having consumed your life with prostitutes, with sexually immoral people, and I don't know that he knows this, he assumes it, and I don't know that the story doesn't say it's wrong. So perhaps the story, perhaps in the story world, we should assume that that's true. He came, and you've killed for him the fatted calf. There's some people who they're kind of considered to have committed unpardonable sins when they do certain things. They're just never going to be restored back. And that's the attitude of the elder brother here. Verse 31. And the father said to him, Son, you are always with me, and everything that I have, everything that is mine is yours. Verse 32. But make merry and rejoice. It was fitting to rejoice and to make merry, because your brother was dead, and he's alive again. He was lost, and now he's found. Of course, the elder brother doesn't seem to come around, as far as we can tell. But the father wants the older brother to be reconciled too. I mean, the father doesn't cast the elder brother into outer darkness either here. It's left in the elder brother's court, as it were, and it was left in Israel's court. Are you going to accept, for example, the Gentiles? Are you going to accept them as somebody who's been reconciled to me? Are you going to accept the lost sheep of Israel, who we have brought back and restored? And so there you have it, the parable of the lost son. Hopefully I'll have a chance to pick one of these verses, some interesting verses. The optative verses are very short, but I do hope to perhaps do a video on YouTube tomorrow with the Greek of one of these verses. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the parable of the lost son. This has been Through the Bible in 10 Years, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15.